Shalom, everybody. I was going to leave this alone and just do the one video on, which I just entitled, um, it was a question, bitter truths or sweet lies. But then as I was looking at the playback, I realized that the very first part where I was explaining why I had uploaded that really brief blurb of just the footage outside of that store, and I was talking about, the color coding being stocked, by people, wearing red articles of clothing and, driving by and, red cars and stuff. I realized that as I was talking about that the majority of the books and such that I just pulled down from the shelves and stuff and out of the different, milk crates and stuff, that they all had red in it. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because I know that while I have, for the most part, pretty much learned to ignore that, and it doesn't generally have that, I'm assuming what their intended, effect, while it doesn't do that for me as often, I realize that there might be people who it still does affect, and I apologize. That was not in any way meant to be. I'm sorry if it was insensitive, but I just really didn't realize that. I didn't see it from that perspective until I was doing the playback and just listening to, what I was talking about. But what it does do, let me just take this as an opportunity to talk about something else, because you see right here, okay, this right here is a good example, which is why I've got the camera just focused on this book. Now, I had this book and all those other books and the comic books there because those are, I was just really just showing just a little bit about myself, that so that just to know a little bit about Sephora, who is, what do you know about her? Okay, her name is Sephora. She's doing, she's editor-in-chief of, and the sole employee and servant of the artisticministry.net, and she's into art, she's into painting, and you can just through looking at these videos you can tell, okay, she likes haiku, she likes comics, she likes to study a lot about history and just different parts of the world, specifically Africa, Hebrews, such and such, that's what I was thinking of, and I wasn't even focusing in on the fact that that those comic books, that those Marvel editions, that those were truth, or that those were that they had red in it, or that like this book. I was just thinking of the fact that it was a book on Japanese haiku, and I really like a lot of the things that it says. In fact, I'm going to use in other videos that I have that I'm hoping to do, if the Most High, blesses me, I'll be able to do them. There are some points that I, from just haiku that I just want to like include in them. So I wasn't thinking of the fact that, that the cover here has red. Or, but see, and that brings me to my next point, and that is, let me just pull this book over here, and that is this whole idea about perspective. Because the one of the things that I realized, and this was, I got this, the Most High showed this to me like a few years back. And like I said, at the time, I was just dealing with this on my own. I didn't know that, again, as I've said it before and I'll say it again, I didn't know that this was so widespread. I didn't know that there was a name for it. I didn't know that I was just one out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds who are dealing with this. I'm going to guess that right here where I live, now that I'm aware of this, just how rampant this is, I'm going to guess that probably in this city alone, there's probably at least 15 to 20, if not 50 people who are probably being gang-stalked and targeted. And we don't know each other. And some of us are probably, aware of it and are involved in maybe communities and have support systems. And then there are others who, like me, are only just now becoming aware of it. And then there are those who have no idea, who are maybe, depending on the circumstances or the situation that they're in, they're working, struggling, living, in apartment complexes, living at home with their families, or just, in different living situations, and they're dealing with stuff and they don't even know what's really going on. But so a lot of the solutions and stuff that I have, were just given to me by the grace of the Most High. And I thank Him for every um, just for the light of His Son. That it shines and burns through my mind, that it reveals to me, that it has, in the past, that it and still does reveals and shows to me the different traps, the different snares, to help me out. And so one of them, that I just for myself, that I had worked out in terms of the color coding, was, I can remember when it was first going on that I would get really, really upset and uncomfortable. I would just get really like, and there's all kinds of feelings would come up. I mean, I like if I was at a bus stop and all of a sudden like all these cars and stuff would start going by and they would, red cars and sometimes maroon colored, burgundy colored, crimson colored, whatever, and it didn't matter. Trucks, cars, sometimes there's different people on skateboards, bikes, whatever, people walking by, walking their dogs and stuff, and wearing, walking their dogs or whatever, and having you wearing different articles of clothing that were red and stuff. There's a part of me that would feel like embarrassed and ashamed, that I was the one having to go through it. Why does this have to happen to me? That was one of the feelings that came up. Just this fear, like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? Why are they, just all of that. And so one of the things that I learned to do was just to ignore it. And because I had grown up, I can remember just different friends and stuff. We would play this game, where we would always try to find. We would play this game called Slug Bug, where you would, especially when we would just do like long. We were on like long drives. We would, just to like keep ourselves busy, entertain us and stuff. We would, say, okay, look for the cars that are yellow, and or look for station wagons, and it was slug bug. So the first person who'd see the yellow car, got to like punch, the other kid. That's kind of a mean, cruel game, but that's what we used to do. So I used to, so when I would, when this was first starting to happen to me, and I would find myself getting really scared and just really nervous, I would do that. I would, say, okay, well, okay, obviously there's red cars. Let me see if I can just focus on, what other cars. What other color cars are there? Are there a lot of green cars? Are there a lot of, gray cars? What about cars that are, what about El Caminos? That's a rare car. Let's see, let me focus and see how many El Caminos I can see. I would just start to do things like that. And that was just, something that I think that the Most High sent to me to just help me, to keep me focused, to not, give in to that, to deny those people, the satisfaction, of seeing me, really just like panic. And, again, I'm assuming that was the whole idea, was to get me scared, to get me panicked and flustered, maybe, like run, literally screaming down the street or something. I mean, I don't know. But one day it dawned on me, and which is why I'm showing this this book perspective. Again, basically the reason I have this book is just trying to, in terms of like just studying art, learning to do 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective, and you're looking at aerial perspective, and then into painting, where you're dealing with atmospheric perspective and stuff like that. But the idea is pretty much the same when you look at it from an abstract point of view, and that is, you want to change your approach. You want to change, your viewpoint, how you're looking at it. And so one day it dawned on me. I was living in Frisco, and all these people, were, again, like I said, there were different, red cars that would, like, follow the bus, or drive up, alongside the bus, or like every street corner, where the bus stopped, there would be like a red car, or just something, or someone, would get on the bus wearing red, and they walk by and whistle, and just, it would just really like get me nervous and upset. And I was at that time, even before then, just spending a lot of time by myself. And I look back on those years that I lived in Frisco, and there are some fond memories, and most of them were, this is when there was like, they used to have like a lot of internet cafes, and it was just me. I would spend like just so much time by myself, and just hanging out, and go to the beach, and just writing haiku, and just really I just loved it, And I can remember, one of my favorite groups was, at the time, was REM, and I remember just being just like so just like I just loved it, when I found that Michael Stipe was into haiku, that he had actually written, him and some of his friends. I can't think of their names right now, but they had actually collaborated and written a book on haiku. And so I was able to get a copy of that. And I was just really having this great time. And so I can remember one late afternoon, I hopped on like the In Judah. I took it all the way to the end of the line. You know, anybody who's familiar with Frisco knows that you follow the In Judah. It takes you right to the beach. And I got off, went to this cafe, then crossed the highway and went down onto the beach. And I was just hanging out, chilling, and it dawned on me. And I remember I was looking around because my the expectation was, okay, who's going to be? There's going to be somebody that's going to show up with with like a red towel or backpack or something. I can remember one time I was going out to the beach and literally, somehow, don't even ask me how they did it, but there's streams and currents, and literally there was like they had put like somebody somehow, don't even ask me how, like about strung 5 or 6 like balloons or something and tossed them in the water, and they literally were just like came floating by, and I was like, no freaking way. I mean, seriously, I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating, and anyone who's ever dealt with that knows exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't know, then it probably does seem kind of like, weird and out there, or a coincidence. But trust me, it's not. So at any rate, so I was like sitting there and I was like looking around, waiting, for someone to show up, come sauntering by, with like, like a red beach towel or like red, swim trunks, or start whistling or something. And at that point, nothing had happened. And so I was like, whoa, okay, wow. And so I was like literally trying to like recall when was the last time that I had seen anyone wearing red, on the trip down. Because I lived I lived in the Western. Anyone who's familiar with, Frisco knows what I'm talking about. So from the Western to catch to the In Judah all the way to the ocean, pretty it's a pretty nice distance. But I was like, I don't remember seeing anybody. No, I don't remember seeing the color red. No. Whoa, whoa. And then I just went, and then it was like this like light bulb went on, and I was like, wait a second. The freaking seats on the train were red. And I just, now that might seem like big, like big deal. What's the big deal? But what dawned on me was, why wasn't I freaking out? I'm supposed to be, isn't this whole thing to make me scared or trip out or get spastic or phobic or something about the color red? How come I didn't freak out? I was sitting on a red seat, the seats, every seat on the train, and every car of the train was red. How come I wasn't freaking out then? You see what I'm saying? If you can catch what I'm saying? I thought it was supposed to be the color red, and then I just like followed that train of thought, and I realized, no, it's not the color red. It's people wearing the color red. And so then I just, because, like I said, I spend, a good amount of time drawing people, looking at people, doing portraits, so I can kind of observe people. I do that a lot. I'm a, people watcher. And so I'm realizing, so it's not specifically the color red, but it's these people that are wearing red, that are driving these red, trucks or cars or, bicycles or whatever. What is it about them? And see, in this, at that time, I was not, I had not returned to the Most High, so I wasn't looking at it from this perspective. But now, I look at it from what I had shared in previous videos about the scripture in the book of Corinthians. We look at what is not seen, you know, as opposed to those things that are seen. Because what is seen is the color red and a person wearing red. But what is not seen? The spirit. What spirit is behind them? Well, obviously they were wanting to operate on the spirit of fear, to get me to be scared of them, to put me in a place of fear. Because, when you're in a place of fear, rationale, logic, common sense goes out the window. That's when you can dash across the street and, get hurt. That's when you can lash out in anger, what you think is anger, but it's really fear. You can make, rash, decisions, rash judgments, behind a place of fear. You can drink, you know, um, get drunk out of fear, use drugs out of fear, anything to try to numb that feeling, to make it go away. If you don't have, like healthy um, conflict resolution skills, or, know how to deal with that. Um, but now, of course, I understand now from a spiritual perspective, what, the Apostle Shaul, or Paul, as most people know him, what he told Timothy. The Most High did not give us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Um, but at the time I didn't know that, so what I was thinking of was more along the lines of these people, they want me to be scared of them. And so one of the ways they get me to be scared of them is by wearing red. And then of course and by then I was aware again of the witchcraft element in it, the satanic attacks. So then using however witchcraft, however they do it, and wearing red, and then the whistling, then that gets me upset, and I just went, wait a minute, these are people just like me, who have to they have to blow their nose when they get a cold. They have to put their they have to put their pants on before they put their shoes on. you know they get scared too. So these, obviously, we're talking about weak people. If they have to go to these extremes to want me to be scared, why do they want me to be scared of them? What is it about me that they would want me to be scared of them? What is it about them that they need me or anyone to be scared of them? Why is someone so desperate to be feared? Why does someone want to be feared? What is it they want? What do you get when people are scared of you? Well, when people are scared of you, they don't resist you. When people are scared of you, they don't argue with you. They give you they give you what you want. They move out of your way. They bow down to you. They don't fight back. So this is about so it's about power. It's about control. And again, those are the words and the perspective that I was looking at that time. And I still believe that, but now I've just added the spiritual component, that what they were using to get that was a spirit of fear. And we're also looking at a spirit of just pride. We're looking at, just looking at it from that perspective. So I just wanted to say that. So for me, again, I had gotten over that, and I forgot about that. And so again, so let me just move this book. So with that in mind, I wasn't even thinking that somebody who hasn't reached that point, that they might go, what the heck is she doing? She's talking about color coding and the color red. Now she's showing all these comic books with red and these books with red. What is she doing? She's an agent. She's an agent. Oh, I mean, I hopefully no one went there, but I just wanted to acknowledge that it didn't dawn on me until I was doing the playback that is probably, that I didn't even realize that. I didn't even recognize that because I have moved past that. So I just wanted to share that with you in terms of like perspective, in terms of not of being able to shift your perspective on the color, because when you look at it from what I was just sharing about, how these are people who want someone who wants you to be scared of them. You're dealing with someone who is, come on. I mean, that's pretty. I can't find the words for it, but it should be quite, obvious what that is. So I mean, I'm supposed to be scared of the color red, but I that fear goes out the window because when I'm looking at this book here, I just think of the beautiful information that's in here, the inspiration that's in here. I'm not tripping on the color red. Or when I was looking at the comic books, A Right to Be Hostile, or Truth or Dare. I mean, I wasn't. That was not what was on my mind, and so I just wanted to share that, and because where I'm at now, I'm in such a different place now, and I just know that it was just through the grace of the Most High, and through the love and the light of His Son, Yahushua, who the world, mistakenly calls Jesus Christ. But I know that it was through, the Messiah and, his light shining, on the path, that the Most High has placed me on and giving me, just through that light or with that light, the ability, to see, to look at things from different perspectives. Again, like I use that analogy of that Rubik's Cube, to turn things over, to sit and ponder them, and to contemplate them. Because that's what we have to do. We have to leave no stone unturned when stepping out of Babylon. And I just wanted to share that, and also, like I shared, also, just some of the books that that I've just been able to read, and just that's helped to open my mind and be a part of my journey and be a vehicle, letting those books and those ideas and the study of them and the exploration of them, letting them be to just be a vehicle, you know. And one of the a book that really, I mean, I love books. Okay, I love reading and stuff like that. So and just studying. And like I said, I was a poli-sci major for a while. I was before I settled down into art, I was a poli-sci major. I was a Spanish linguistics. I mean, just I just learning for the sake of learning is just really something that I enjoyed. And also, I think I shared with you also that I had there was a point in my life where I was really just I didn't have the information that I have now in terms of like religion. Because I think if you're going to really embrace, anything that is going to that you're going to use that as a way to as a source of strength, as a source of comfort, as a source of of guidance and direction to deal with this, what we're dealing with, especially being as life in general, but specifically being targeted and gang stalked, that it behooves you to know a little bit something about that source that you're putting all your hope in. And so for me, it was what people, they call it Christianity, and see, and I separate it. Like I said, I am the word Christianity is not, that's not the word that the Messiah used for his followers. He said, "You are the branches, and I am the vine, and my Father is the husbandman." And we know that, of course, he wasn't speaking English, he wasn't speaking Latin. Again, when you look at the politics and the culture of what was going on in that area with the people of Galilee, with the people, with the Nazarenes, of Nazareth, chances are he really was speaking Hebrew. Though there are some people who try to say that Hebrew wasn't being spoken at the time, that they were speaking Aramaic, but there's no real proof of that. Okay, but what we do know is that the word that they use, the Hebrew word for branches, it's net, and singular it's netzari, and the plural is netzarim. So he was saying, "You are netzarim, you are branches, and I am the vine. You are branches on me. And my Father is the husbandman." Okay, that's what he was saying. And so wanting to learn more about that, because that's who I was depending on as being, my strength, being the light, on the road that I'm on, being the light that shines through my mind, wanting to know more about that. And when I decided to start doing some studying on that, I did not. It brought me to Northeast Africa, and so that's where, and that is, again, that's something that that can't be overlooked and that can't be, taken for granted. And though I know some people, have this attitude where it really doesn't matter, you're making a big deal out of this, and I just don't. I think that because what the time period that we're living in, the events that we are seeing unfold before us, it's a blessing. It's a wonderful time to be alive, because we're literally seeing the fulfillment of Bible prophecies, prophecies that were written, that were received and written down thousands of years ago. We are actually seeing them fulfilled. We are living in that time that were written in the book of Daniel, that knowledge would increase. We're seeing that we now have information at our fingertips. All we have to do is sit, turn on, hit a button, turn on a computer, and we can have access to data banks across the world. Where people like me, as a Hebrew woman, as a black woman, would never have had access to 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And depending on who you are, you probably wouldn't have had it either. I know there's always this assumption that, well, maybe, the white people would have, but depending on the social class, depending on literally their educational level, they probably wouldn't have had access to those data banks either. Just keeping it real. But see, now we don't have that excuse. And so we know that where these events took place, a lot has been, covered up, a lot has been changed for different reasons, supporting different agendas, different causes. But many of the events, the events that took place, amongst the Hebrew people, we were given the idea that they occurred. It feels like when you say Middle East, you think that the Middle East is way, way like far away from Africa, but it's actually Northeast Africa. And many of those events, depending on who you talk to, they occurred in parts of Africa that were a little further south, okay, depending on who you talk to. When you look at like Abraham and who he was and who he married, and Sarah and Keturah and who these people were, and the patterns that were established in terms of marrying the first wife from the north, a second wife from the south, and just there's just so much to it that is that we just here in the West, those of us who are just products of a Western Christianity, that we are just not aware of. And so learning these truths, finding these truths out, and how they shaped and played a part in my development and my choice to stick with this, because it is a source. So I'm going to turn the page here, so please be patient here. Because this is a book that is really just the information is just amazing. So what we're looking at here, this is a picture. These are this is a typical family in modern Jericho. Okay, so and we look at them and we realize, that part of the world. A lot of times we say when we think of that part of the world, when we think of when we call that that the Middle East, when we see like a child say, we think that the people are of this complexion or lighter still, and there are, but the truth of the matter is that at the time period when a lot of these events took place, the majority of the people were more of this child's complexion and darker still, and the Messiah, his family, the people, that we read about, this is actually, what was going on. And again, I know there are people who, look at this and just be like, well, what difference does it make? It doesn't matter now. But it does matter. One of the things that we know that that the Messiah, that he told, Nicodemus, he said, he told him, made it very clear. He said, the hour soon cometh and now is, when the believers will worship, they will worship in spirit and in truth. In spirit and in truth. That is what he said. In spirit and in truth. So, I don't want to be a broken record about it, but there's a part of me that feels that is what needs to happen, because in terms of this being a source, of strength and comfort and direction, if you're gonna invest heavily in something, it behooves you to know the truth about it, okay? And so there's more that I want to get into, but what I decided that I was going to do is in the discussion section, On my channel, I put a question. Do you think it really does matter? I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember what the exact question was, but does it matter? Does it really matter the name and the race or ethnicity of the Messiah? Does it really matter? And I just want to know what people think, because many of us, we will go to great lengths. We will do video after video after video. We will, go to the ends of the earth, to find out, what's happening, on say like Game of Thrones, and is Dany pregnant? Is she gonna have, a baby? Is John really the Song of Ice and Fire? Or what's happening on Westworld, and all this, and just all this stuff, and these reality TV shows. But all of a sudden you start talking about the truths, these eternal truths that have to do with the saving of the soul, and the response is like, well, look, you might be taking this a little too far. I don't really think it's that really big of a deal. You might be just being a bit too much, and I just find that really amazing, because we've been in many respects here, at least in the Western world, we've been bamboozled, and what we think of as our source of strength, the ideas, the images that we have in our mind's eye are not the real truth. And I think some of us, what's in our mind's eye, what's been given to us, we put a lot to that. We pretend that we don't, or we're not aware of how much we do, but we really do. And so when the truth comes out, what happens then? I know there are people that, that say, oh, well, it doesn't matter to me. And I'm thinking white and black. Oh, it doesn't matter to me. I love my Jesus, and I don't care if he turns out to be just as black as the night sky. I'm just gonna love him. And well, we'll that you truly might be having to put that to the test. But so yeah, go to because I can do I got my master's in teaching, adult teaching, and adult education. So definitely, I mean, this ministry is not specifically geared towards teaching, though I'm not opposed to that. But yeah, there's a question in the discussion. Does it matter? Does the name and the race, ethnicity of our Messiah, does it really matter? Please leave an answer. Yes, no, and why? Because I think that because the way race has become an issue, I think that it really will start to play a part. Some for good and some for bad, but I think it will. And because when you look at the scriptures, when you look at what is said, when you learn to read the scriptures, to understand, the symbolism and the metaphor, then certain things, they start to make sense, and you realize that what we've been, the way we look at the scriptures here in the Western world, that it's misleading, and it's very surface. Okay, because like let me just show you this picture here, because this is what the majority of us, if you take this picture to almost any part of the world, and you ask them who this is, ¿Quién es este? In whichever language, the majority of them, they're going to tell you that they'll say Jesus Christ, or Jesucristo, or just, whatever language they're in, they speak, they'll say that. And this is what, for many, many centuries, this image, was what was used in a lot of the paintings, the murals. This is, the image that was used to represent our Messiah, that was used to represent the Son of the Most High. When we spoke of the crucifixion, when we spoke of the Messiah feeding the 5,000, when we spoke of the Messiah healing the mother of Peter, when we spoke of the Messiah calling Lazarus forth from the grave, when we speak of the Messiah defending Mary, the woman who was caught committing adultery, and who basically told her accusers, "He who is without sin, let him cast the first stone." And they all had to walk away. And he said to her, "Woman, where are thine accusers?" I mean, when we think of that story, when we think of those examples of his life and his ministry, this image right here that you're looking at on the screen, this is who we have in our mind's eye. But if you, again, just doing study, just doing research, which is what Paul, the Apostle Paul, what he admonished Timothy, study to show thyself approved. Okay, when you look at who this really is, well, then you know that was actually, that those early images of the Messiah were based on this man, Cesare Borgia. And my understanding is that there is actually a series on HBO about the Borgia family. He is Cesare Borgia was the son of Pope Alexander I want to say the 6th. But this was a man who was the most least likely candidate that should have been used to represent the Messiah, the man who did all of those miraculous and just righteous and just acts. Because this man here, when we look at his history, we know that he was known as a poisoner. The Borgia family was known to kill their enemies by poison. We know that he was a fornicator. We know that he was accused of fathering. It was his sister Lucretia Borgia, also a known poisoner. It's believed that either he fathered one of her children or her own father, the Pope Alexander, fathered one of her children. This man here, Cesare Borgia, was a man who, on at least one occasion, there was a singer who wrote a ditty about him. He didn't like it. Cesare Borgia had the man apprehended and had his tongue cut out. This was a man who would have known criminals brought in and have them lined up in his garden, and he would use them for target practice with his crossbow. This was a very vile man. This was a man whose lover was Leonardo da Vinci. This was a man who, because of his sexual promiscuity and his later years in life, he was stricken with, I believe it was syphilis. His face was, he had to wear a mask, at least cover up parts of his face. But this is the man who they chose to use to represent the Hebrew Messiah. And I've said this before, of all the people they could have used just an unknown farmer. If they really wanted to remove the Hebrew origins and truth about the Messiah, why did they choose this particular man? Now you see, in terms of defaming and destroying the Messiah and what it was that he was all about, well, then it would make sense. And for those of us who are T.I.s, we can see the effect that would have and why you would do that to someone. But this was the man that they used in this image here. Okay, and you can see the likeness. Many of us, those of us who were raised in Christian communities or Christian households, especially mainstream, Christianity, the different Sunday school books and coloring books and different, cards and stuff, the little paper cards and bookmarkers and stuff, you can recognize them. And even just in terms of art history, here's another picture. This is, you can still see how, while it's not an exact, this is not an exact rendering, you know, but you can see where the influence, it's still there, that we're looking at an image of the Messiah, and it's really based on a likeness of Cesare Borgia, okay? But when we look at the scriptures, when we read, and especially in the law, in the description that was given, you know, of the Messiah, we know that, in all honesty, I'll show you a picture here, that this is probably a more accurate portrayal or depiction of what our Messiah looked like. And in all honesty, just keeping it real, the description, that the verse that's given of the Messiah in the book of Exodus, we know that he was actually much, much darker than this. I think that people forget that. When you really start doing your history, your research into history, you know that the Hebrews, specifically the tribe of Judah, were very dark-skinned people, very dark-skinned. But this is a wood sculpture done by an artist, again, out of Africa. And just in terms of just the aesthetic, just the beauty of this is just amazing. I'm not a sculptor. That's something that I've never tried my hand at, especially wood sculpting. I mean, man, that is something that is just, I mean, you would, just the ability to do that, to just from beginning to end, wood sculpting is just, it's just amazing. It's very impressive. But at any rate, this is probably a more accurate depiction of the man who performed those miracles, who stretched, extended those 2 fish and 5 loaves of barley and fed 5,000. This is probably a more accurate description or rendering of the man who calmed that raging sea, and who walked on water and stepped from the water onto the boat, okay, and who encouraged Peter that he could do the same. This right here, this man right here, okay, that's the truth. And again, targeted individuals, we love the truth. We know that the truth is necessary. In order for us to make it through, we need the truth. We need the truth about the people in our lives that we dare to let close to us, even down to the most minuscule thing, accepting a ride from someone in a car, giving someone a ride in a car, because we could be giving a ride to a perpetrator, to a stalker, who could set us up, get us in a car wreck, get us stopped by the police, and we could end up losing our license and losing our car. That's how important the truth is. So if you can, and I know that any T.I. listening to me knows the truth of what I just said in those examples. So you can accept and understand the importance of the truth in those areas, but when it comes to your soul salvation, when it comes to the Messiah who died and gave his life and paid for our sins with his blood so that we could gain eternal life, all of a sudden truth doesn't matter, and I'm just making a big deal of it, and it really isn't that big, it really isn't that important, and just, just love whoever. No, I don't think so. But this is what I started to do, okay? I started to study. I started to pray. I started to ponder. I started to meditate. And which is why, like I said, I do not consider myself a Christian. I am Netzari. I am a very small branch on the vine of the Messiah, and his father is the husbandman. And I can talk more about this. I can share more truth with you and information that I've learned. But please, by all means, go to the discussion section on the channel and answer that question. Let me know. And also let me know if you like the length of the longer videos or if you prefer the shorter videos. I'm going to start putting the ministry email. It's also on the, if you look in the about, the email is there also. But I think I'm just going to start putting it on the screen. So if you do want to get a hold of me, that way you can avoid any problems in terms of, you know, being able to communicate with people. But thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your comments. They're very much appreciated. And I'll try to, you know, comment and respond back. And okay, with that I say shalom.